This video summarizes the changes to the RE33 for the July 2019 edition. This particular form is the promissory note. This form was created years and years ago where a buyer didn't have the cash at the time or simply wasn't physically available to tender a check as earnest money. It was typically used in exchange for an earnest money check. That creates a contract. It is a promissory note. It is a negotiable instrument between two individuals, the seller and the buyer. That is where this is most frequently used. That's what it was designed for. The problem arose is that brokerages started using this promissory note for a whole series of other things, and the old promissory note was not drafted to allow it to be used for other purposes. And while brokerages were scratching out lines where the seller's name was referenced and scratching in their or penciling in their own brokerage names, it really was leading to a practice that exposed the brokerage to a tremendous amount of liability because they were placing themselves in the middle of the transaction between the seller and the buyer. As we all know, we spend a tremendous amount of time and effort keeping brokerages out of the middle of those transactions and keeping everybody within their lane during a real estate purchase. However, with those changes, restricting this and making this more clear that it was between a buyer and a seller, and only a buyer and a seller, the committee heard some comments where brokerages were a little frustrated because they lost the ability to use this promissory note for other things. So, as a result, the committee went back and spent a little bit more time with the promissory note to allow it to do other things. So that's where you see the words other that are here. And so when you have, this is the note. The note is being made by an individual who is identified down here as the maker. The maker is making promises. They are promising to pay the seller, and it used to just simply say seller, but now it's saying other. So who is the maker promising to pay? The brokerage, if it's for a commission or for services rendered or for whatever purposes you're using it for, you would click other, you would write the brokerage name in here. If you're using this in the traditional sense, which is in place of earnest money, the maker, who is the buyer, is promising to pay the seller. Even though the broker may be holding this as earnest money, or a title company may receive this note as evidence of the earnest money, we do not change who's being paid. The seller is being paid if it's earnest money. No other changes to these next few lines where we talk about the percentages and things of that nature, but other checkboxes were added here at the end, because if you're going to use this for something other than an earnest money situation, how is it going to be tendered? It's going to be tendered directly to the seller, to the brokerage, and anytime if it was earnest money, if it's being tendered to the brokerage, it's for the benefit of seller, right? That's how it used to read. But now, because it has possibility of being used for other purposes, we know it's going to go to the brokerage, but for whose benefit? Is it for the benefit of the seller? Is it for the benefit of somebody else, like the brokerage? So you would write that in that line, or to a closing company, again, for the benefit of whom? Seller or a brokerage. You can fill in those particular blanks. So those changes were designed to expand the use of this promissory note, hopefully to address some of the circumstances where it's being used for something beyond an earnest money situation.